opportunity for me to speak on something, it's not because I'm doing that thing very well, but it's because I'm in the middle of a learning process with it. So today I want to invite you into my current relationship with hope, what that looks like. And then most importantly, we're going to look at how Jesus handled big emotions in scripture. He had big grief, disappointment, fear, anxiety, depression, and we just want to learn from him, see what he did with all of that. So first, I want to start by giving you a little snapshot of my week to set up why I'm sharing with you today. This week, I'm sure it's been similar to a lot of yours, but my mom called me on Tuesday, and my mom and I talk about every day. And so I hadn't called her in 3 days, so she was calling me to let me know. And she just said, "How are you? Like, what's going on?" And it really gave me pause to reflect on how I was actually doing, to take a minute and really validate some of the emotions that I was having. My default when a lot is going on, like it is now in the world with COVID, my default is to withdraw. So that's what some of this has looked like in my journey. And what was really eating at me was that I felt like as a believer that I couldn't hold these seemingly contradictory emotions at the same time. And what I mean by that is that I was having feelings of disappointment, and then I would have glimpses of joy. And then I would feel really anxious, and then maybe fear would creep in. And to have all of these at once, it felt like I wasn't being completely genuine. How can I really be having this array of emotions? So one of those sets I thought had to be false. And so what that turned into is I was shoulding all over myself. I should have enough hope for myself. And as a believer, I should have enough hope, not just for me, but for everyone around me. So I spent a lot of time with God this last week and just trying to find this balance between validating my emotions without letting them have power over my thought life. And I think that line is very, it's a tough line to walk. And so I figured since I'm having trouble figuring out how to hold all of these emotions at once, the good with the bad, that some of you may be too. And so also, I thought what Rick said on Sunday was so good that if you're on social media at all right now, you're probably seeing a lot of stuff around maybe people quoting scripture on don't be afraid, don't worry, different things like that. Angels said it in the Bible, God said it in the Bible, Jesus said it, and it can seem invalidating to our emotions because we don't just switch like that, right? We don't have a switch that's like, oh, okay, I'm not going to feel that anymore. And I would argue, too, that it's actually not really healthy to not acknowledge some of those emotions. Emotions are not our enemy until we give them power to run our thought life. So it's definitely in here. However, today, I want to talk about how Jesus handled fear and disappointment, as well as a few of the other greatest leaders in the Bible. Man, we look at Moses. We look at Nehemiah, we look at Peter. These are godly men that probably you resonate with one of those three. And there are pieces of them that, yeah, they did miraculous things for God. And they said yes in big ways that shaped really our faith today. The church was built on Peter, right? And all of them, every single one of them have some bold statement in the Bible directly saying, I am very afraid. They were afraid. These men were terrified to step into an unknown of what God may be calling them to. Unknowns can be really scary. So my encouragement to you is to check out those three people, Moses, Nehemiah, and Peter, sometime this week. But today we're going to reflect on Jesus. So before I jump into scripture, just to set it up a little bit, Jesus is taking three of his best friends, and they are going to the Garden of Gethsemane. And he just found out that, not just found out, he knew it was coming, but he knows that he is about to be betrayed by one of his best, closest friends and followers. And betrayal, he knows, ends in death, suffering and death. So we meet them in Mark 14:32. It says, they went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death, he said to them. Stay here and keep watch. Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible, this hour might pass from him. Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. And then he asked his closest friends to pray with him. So if we back up a couple verses, we meet Jesus in the darkest time of his life that we know about in Scripture. He says that my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He says he's deeply distressed and troubled. Does anyone feel deeply distressed and troubled, sorrowful? Jesus absolutely connects with our big emotions. And I think that that's sometimes hard to forget. That I hope it's hopeful to you today that he himself went through so much suffering that he truly understands when we are going through something that is overwhelming to our souls. And I had to remind myself of this week, that he's not sitting next to me saying, Terrence, stop being afraid, stop being disappointed. All that stuff didn't matter anyway. You don't need to be anxious. No. He sits in understanding. I believe, in fact, what he's saying is just a question to us like, yeah, I get that. Will you talk to me about it? Will you talk to me about it? And so if you are a person that likes action steps, we'll back up a couple verses to what Jesus did. He steps directly into prayer. He states his emotions, and what does he do with them? He takes them to his Father immediately. And the second thing he does is he asks for backup. He is not doing this prayer thing alone. He is jumping into this with backup from 3 of his best friends, right? He asks for backup. So prayer, and then having people pray for you. I want to share one more piece of scripture with you today because it completely transformed the way that I view hope this week. I think as a believer, sometimes the way that I've heard hope talked about is that you muster it up. I'm going to be hopeful because I'm a believer and I put my trust in Jesus, which is true. And I can't just make myself feel that way when I don't always feel that way, right? So it's this lens from mustering hope up to the fact that hope is a consistent, intentional posture that we're adding to our lives as a practice. So we are in Romans 5, verse 3. Not only so, and we boast in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. Okay, so we'll pause on those 4 things right there. Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. So this helped me to remember that hope is a process. It's actually maybe even a cycle. This is a great visual for me that there's different ways that we can persevere. And perseverance is one step closer to truly feeling hope. So maybe perseverance to you means praise, worship. Praise reminds our hearts of hope, peace, joy. It gives us words that we wouldn't have otherwise. And more likely than not, perseverance probably also means prayer. Perseverance means prayer for every single one of us. It's our character as people of faith that are built in times of suffering. So if we are in a time of suffering right now, we have a choice to persevere. We have a choice to lean into prayer. So you can have a really big emotion. You can have anxious, feel like it's taking over your soul and overwhelming you. And perseverance sometimes just means taking it to God and saying, okay, yeah, God, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. I don't even know how to pray right now. Will you give me wisdom to know what to say? Or will you just sit with me right now? Will you just sit with me in this? Because I don't know what to do. Sometimes that's all persevering is. And in this time, your character will be built depending on how you persevere. And that leads to hope. And so you don't have to wait until all this COVID confusion is over to have hope. You have all of the ingredients right now to find hope. You can have hope in this moment. And sometimes you might have to go through this cycle of hope minute by minute. It doesn't mean you're losing hope. It just means you need to remind yourself that I can persevere, and persevering means that I get to turn to Jesus. I have that piece, that missing link. So my encouragement to you is persevere through prayer, and that hope can sprout in your life right now.